Russell wasn't reckless, and he wasn't a failure in any conventional sense. For 29 years, he worked as a technical director, the kind of specialist companies depend on when things break, but rarely acknowledge when everything runs smoothly. He understood buildings not as static objects, but as complex, layered systems, airflow moving through hidden ducts, electrical lines branching behind walls, maintenance routes buried under years of modifications. He knew which access panels were opened weekly and which hadn't been touched in decades, which systems had backups and which were quietly degrading out of sight. His role was to prevent problems before they appeared, to keep everything functioning so seamlessly that no one had to think about it. That invisibility became his value and eventually his vulnerability. When the company was acquired, the shift didn't happen overnight. It began with small changes, new reporting structures, unfamiliar management, revised procedures that seemed inefficient but were framed as optimized. Over time, those changes aligned into a single direction: cut costs, reduce redundancy, simplify operations. Experience like Russell's, once considered critical, became expensive. The meeting that ended his career lasted less than 15 minutes. A prepared statement, a severance agreement, a quiet but final conclusion. His position was no longer needed. No transition, no negotiation, just a system moving forward without him. At first, he followed the expected path. He updated his resume, reached out to contacts, scheduled interviews, but the pattern became clear quickly. Employers were polite but non-committal. Some offered roles far below his previous level. Others disappeared after initial conversations. The industry had shifted. Companies wanted flexibility, lower costs, interchangeable roles. Russell represented the opposite: depth, stability, long-term knowledge. His savings began to shrink, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. Monthly expenses turned into weekly calculations, then daily trade-offs. He cut everything non-essential, delayed payments, sold possessions. The stress changed the atmosphere at home. Conversations became shorter, more strained, more focused on what was running out rather than what could be rebuilt. His wife tried to adapt, but uncertainty erodes stability in ways that arguments never could. Eventually, she left, not with anger, but with quiet finality. One suitcase, a brief goodbye, no promise of return. After that, the house stopped feeling like a home and became just another obligation he could no longer sustain. The foreclosure process moved forward without emotion. Letters, deadlines, legal steps that didn't pause for context. When it ended, the house was gone, and with it, the last structure of his previous life. Russell turned to social services, expecting at least temporary support, but found a system overwhelmed by demand. Every option came with delays, applications, waiting lists, limited capacity. The answer was consistent: 6 months, 6 months before space might open, 6 months without stability, privacy, or control. That was when his thinking shifted. Instead of asking where he was allowed to stay, he began asking where he could exist without being noticed. He started observing the city differently: empty restaurants with intact roofs, closed stores with functioning interiors, buildings that were no longer economically useful, but still structurally sound. He realized something fundamental. Abandonment doesn't mean destruction. It means absence of use. And anything unused exists in a kind of blind spot. That insight became the foundation of his plan. He approached the search with the same precision he once applied to infrastructure systems. The building needed to be vacant long enough that no one checked it regularly, located in an area with minimal nighttime activity, and built in a way he already understood. Familiarity would reduce risk. That's when he remembered an old Pizza Hut location. He had worked with similar buildings before and knew their structural patterns, the elevated edges of the roof, the recessed center, the predictable placement of service access points. When he found it, he didn't approach immediately. He observed from a distance over several days, tracking movement patterns, noting when nearby activity dropped to zero, identifying windows of time where the environment became effectively empty. Only then did he move closer. The building showed no signs of maintenance, no lighting, no security. It wasn't protected because it wasn't considered valuable. The entry point required patience. Breaking in would leave evidence, damage, noise, a clear sign of intrusion. Instead, he searched for something designed to be opened. At the back, partially hidden by neglect and shadow, he found a small HVAC service panel, rusted, overlooked, but intact. The bolts were corroded enough to resist sudden force, but not beyond replacement. Over multiple nights, he worked slowly, replacing them one by one with modified versions that could be removed quickly and silently. Inside, he installed a magnetic latch that secured the panel without changing its external appearance. From the outside, nothing looked different. From the inside, it became a controlled entry point. He established strict movement rules: enter and exit only between 2 and 4 in the morning when human activity dropped to almost nothing. Never step on soft ground that could record footprints. Always move across concrete or asphalt. Never create patterns that could be tracked. These rules weren't optional. They were the system that kept him invisible. Once inside, he focused on making the space sustainable without triggering attention. Electricity was essential, but reconnecting to the grid would create records and invite inspection, so he built an independent system. He acquired 4 used solar panels, selecting them for size and output rather than appearance. The building's roof design gave him an advantage. The raised perimeter concealed the center from ground level view. That hidden section became the perfect location. He installed the panels there, angling them carefully to maximize efficiency while remaining invisible. Wiring was routed internally through existing pathways. The system generated limited power, so he prioritized usage, low energy lighting, a small refrigerator, and essential electronics like his phone and laptop. Every watt had purpose. Nothing was wasted. Water required a different strategy. Municipal supply would leave a data trail, so he turned to collection. The roof became a catchment surface, directing rainwater into modified gutters that fed into a large storage tank hidden inside the building. The capacity was carefully chosen, large enough to reduce dependency on frequent rainfall, but small enough to remain concealed. He installed a filtration system and a low power pump connected to his solar setup. The result was a closed system: water for washing, cooking, and hygiene, all without external detection. Officially, the building remained disconnected. In reality, it functioned quietly. When winter arrived, the environment became hostile. Large, empty spaces amplify cold, and the building offered little insulation without active heating. Russell needed a solution that wouldn't expose him. He chose a wood-burning stove. Simple, reliable, independent, but smoke presented a risk. Visible emissions could draw attention. Instead of venting it directly, he integrated the stove into the building's existing ventilation system. The old kitchen exhaust hood provided a pathway to the roof. By connecting to it, he controlled how smoke exited and dispersed. He added strict limitations: fires only at night, only when necessary, and always at low intensity. In darkness and cold air, smoke dissipates quickly and blends with natural vapor. With careful timing, the risk became manageable. The final element of his system was perception. Visibility isn't just about being seen, it's about being noticed. A clean building invites curiosity. A maintained space attracts inspection. Russell understood that neglect creates invisibility, so he preserved it He allowed weeds to grow through cracks in the pavement, left debris scattered, and even added graffiti to reinforce the impression of abandonment. Inside, he confined his living space to a small section, sealing off larger areas to prevent light from escaping. From the outside, nothing changed. The building remained exactly what it appeared to be, forgotten. For 19 months, this system worked without interruption. Then came the only real threat, a potential buyer. Russell didn't discover it by accident. He anticipated it, recognizing patterns and how property transactions are initiated. When he confirmed it, he knew he had limited time. 1 hour, he didn't panic. Every part of his setup had been designed with this possibility in mind. He packed his belongings into a concealed compartment, removed all visible traces of habitation, and restored the interior to its abandoned state. Then he exited through his hidden panel and left the area on foot, blending into normal activity. He spent the time in a nearby cafe, waiting. The buyers arrived, inspected the building, and saw exactly what the environment suggested: decay, neglect, cost. Their conclusion followed naturally. The building wasn't worth restoring. Demolition was more practical. When they left, the immediate threat disappeared. Russell returned the same way he always did, re-entering without altering the building's appearance. What he had created wasn't just a place to stay, but a system built on understanding of structures, of patterns, of how absence of attention can become protection. In a world that had removed him from its formal systems, that knowledge allowed him to exist just outside them, unseen but sustained.